The reading for today is from the Integrity Advantage, Stepping into Your Truth, Love Your Life, and Claim Your Magnificence by Kelly Kassau. She says, being connected is about recognizing both our grandeur and smallness, our humanity and divinity. It is about understanding that to be in integrity, not only do we need to connect to the wholeness of who we are, but also be plugged into the knowledge that something bigger than you or me is always supporting us. We are in a synchronistic relationship with the universe, and consequently, we always have the most powerful partner by our side, supporting us as we step out of the smallness of our fears and tolerances of our limitations and into the reality of our hopes and desires. Faith is an essential ingredient in a life of integrity, giving us courage, confidence, and certainty to own all of who we are. And it is the bridge between mediocrity and magnificence, fear and freedom.
Beautiful. So welcome to those of you who may have just arrived in the sanctuary. The theme for the month of February is integrity. The tagline is, I am truthful in words and motives. And my talk title today is integrity. And Ruth kind of laughed and rolled her eyes like, duh, okay, great. In a month on integrity, we should probably talk about integrity, just get us all started on the same page, right? So in most dictionaries, the word integrity is typically described in two different ways. The first is the quality of being honest, of having really strong moral principles, of doing the right thing in every circumstance, even when nobody is watching. Now, I think that probably most of us are pretty familiar with this particular definition of that word integrity. The second definition is the state of being whole and undivided. Now, the first time I ever heard this word whole used in a spiritual setting, I was at Agape in Los Angeles, California. It was the very first Science of Mind Center that I had ever attended. And I was about 49 years old, and I didn't have a clue what they were talking about. Not a clue. While I remember with absolute clarity that I really felt some sense of joy and peace when I heard this idea about wholeness, I really had no frame of reference for the concept at all. As many of you may know, I didn't really grow up in a very religious or even spiritual family, and so it didn't really dawn on me that this idea of wholeness would have anything to do with God. The only thing that I knew about whole was that it was spelled H-O-L-E, and I had a really big, deep, dark one in the center of my being. A hole that I was constantly trying to fill up, to no avail, with things that were outside of myself. Relationships, careers, material things, and even, some experiences. Now, I have to tell you, by all human account, I really had a very successful and prosperous life, and yet that hole remained. Now, as many of you know, the teachings of Science of Mind have 10 core concepts. They're beautifully interpreted in these artwork along the side by our fabulous Marianne Hardy. And the fifth core concept is wholeness. Now, the universal description of wholeness states there is a universe of wholeness, allness, oneness. Spirit is a transcendent, perfect wholeness that in its infinite inclusivity harmoniously embraces all seeming opposites. Huh? What did she say? Oh, we love our Ernest Holmes. Now, we'll go into it a little bit, and maybe you're going to be able to understand it when I say that the words that really jumped out at me from this core concept are oneness, infinite inclusivity, and harmoniously embracing. So we'll begin with oneness. Now, for me, through my studies in ministerial school, I really believe that metaphysically, oneness means to become whole. It is, I believe it is the union or the marriage, if you will, of our merely human selves with our divine self. It is about having an experience of knowing beyond a shadow of a doubt our unity with the divine. Truly experiencing a union with the divine, with something that is greater than we are. Now, for me, when I finally remembered God, after my initial upbringing, when I finally remembered God and its presence in my life, then everything began to shift for me. I no longer had that deep, dark hole within me. I no longer had to look outside of myself for anything to fill that hole. I was already whole. And the longer that I could stay standing in that truth, then the more grounded I became in it. The quieter I became, the more I felt that connection, the more I understood that wholeness, that oneness. Now, it took time, and it took discipline, and it took patience, and it took prayer. But I now have a much deeper understanding of that. And I no longer feel like that whole, H-O-L-E, is existing in the center of my being. The second is infinite inclusivity. Now, so often in our humanness, we experience, or we see, maybe we see in the world, or we experience in our own lives, such duality. Right? On a really simple, primitive plane, it would be like up and down, high and low, hot and cold, right and wrong, good and evil. And that list could go on, but perhaps, we can look out into the world and see that, what we are standing for here is not really what we are experiencing or seeing going on in the world. And so this duality seems to show up for us. Now, in a book called Sympathetic Vibrations, K.C. Cole used the term complementary for what we are calling God's infinite inclusivity. He says, complementary ideas are opposing ideas that add up to much more than the sum of their parts. They complement each other like night and day, male and female, on one hand, and on the other hand. Complements are required for a full spectrum of understanding, just as a full array of colors is required to produce pure white. Now, in Chinese philosophy, they use the terms yin and yang. Yin and yang, they are concepts that they use to really describe how apparently opposite or even contrary forces are actually complementary. Yin and yang can be thought of as those opposing forces that interact to form a dynamic system in which the whole is greater than the sum of the assembled parts. Now, the universe is a dynamic system. Everything about it is dynamic. Everything has yin and yang. For instance, shadow cannot exist without the light. They're two sides of the same coin, if you will. Carl Jung even went so far as to say, how can I be substantial if I do not cast a shadow? I must have a dark side if I am to be whole. So what I also think that we must realize is that This duality and it is kind of really all relative. It's all relative, and it's very open to perception. It's very open to interpretation. So what I think might be tall, to a tall person doesn't seem tall at all. Or what I think is really cold, to Rebecca doesn't feel cold at all. So when does short become tall, or when does light become dark? It's on a spectrum. And it's really open to our interpretation relative to the lens that we are seeing the experience through. Now, the truth is that something is not true unless it's true for everybody. And if it's not true for everybody, then it's not the truth, but just perception. So wholeness is the idea that it holds all of this in infinite inclusivity. Everything is included. And lastly, there's this idea of harmoniously embracing. Harmoniously embracing just who we are, the all of us, and letting go of the idea that we should be a particular way, and just embracing who we really are at that moment. Harmoniously embracing the partnership between ourselves and God. Harmoniously embracing the masculine and feminine aspects of us, or the mind, body, and spirit aspects of us. Harmoniously embracing our past and our future in order to be able to live in the now moment. Harmoniously embracing everything and everyone on the planet. Or harmoniously embracing all of the parts and aspects that are within us, those that we like and those that we might not like so much, really all of the seemingly opposites within us and within our lives. In harmoniously embracing, the invitation is to make all of it welcome. Now, this doesn't mean that we don't continue to grow, or that we, really stop becoming more aware, or stop deepening our awareness of God within, but really that we just find a way for all of us, meaning all of that is within me, all of my experiences, all of our relationships, both individually and collectively, to be in harmony. And this includes most especially the relationship that we have with ourselves. Really, that's the relationship, true, that we have with God. Now, Rumi has a poem called The Guest House. It reads, "This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of all of its furniture. Still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond." So my guess is that there might be a few of you here, sitting here today, that might be thinking, why would I want to be in touch with my neediness? Why would I want to be in touch with my weakness? Why would I want to be in touch with my selfishness? Why would I want to be in touch with my ignorance? I'm, of course, not speaking about me right now. I was just speaking in general, right? Why would I want to be in touch with any of that? What's so wrong about just shutting out all of those parts of myself? Now, in her book, The Integrity Advantage, Stepping into Your Truth, Love Your Life and Claim Your Magnificent, Kelly Koso, this name has been said 43 different ways today. I apologize, Kelly, wherever you are. She says, the problem is when we cut ourselves off from our whole being, we end up stunted, overcompensating for what we think we lack and become extreme versions of certain characteristics. So the things that we do not like about ourselves represent our shadow side, our shadow self, those aspects of ourselves that we would really rather reject. We fear that others will find out that deep within our core we possess what we would call negative qualities. We hide those in the background and we create facades and personas to prove that we are not like that thing that we say we dislike. When we feel incomplete and divided from the whole of ourselves, then we begin to look outside of ourselves for validation. And when we begin to look outside of ourselves for validation or for love or for anything, then we are really living our lives out of integrity. Theodore Isaac Rubin says, I must learn to love the fool in me, the one who feels too much, talks too much, takes too many chances, wins sometimes and loses often, lacks self-control, loves and hates, hurts and gets hurt, promises and breaks promises, laughs and cries. It alone protects me against that utterly self-controlled, masterful tyrant who I also harbor and who would rob me of my human aliveness, humility, and dignity but for my fool. It's beautiful. Until we face what we consider undesirable within us, those parts of ourselves are actually driving us. So, for example, the person who feels unworthy grows up to be a people pleaser. I know about this. They do everything for others in order to prove to the world, and probably more so to themselves, that they just how worthy they actually are. They completely shut themselves off from their own wants, their own needs, and their own desires. They say yes when they would really rather say no, and then they resent the other for it. The person who feels uncomfortable or unlovable or flawed because their parents abandoned them becomes the charmer. They make sure that they are always accepted and valued by everyone in their lives. They try to fill themselves up with love and validation from others, but they're never really able to do so. This belief that they have that they are unlovable prevents them from really getting the love that they really desire from others and even from themselves. Kelly says, being out of integrity means that something is off. What we are doing on the outside is not aligned with how we feel on the inside. Our life is not aligned with who we are. It is filled with other people's wants and desires, thinking we should be doing things we think we should be doing or stuff that doesn't mean anything to us. We make decisions based on lack instead of our wholeness, fear instead of our truth, and in the confines of our comfort zone instead of the vastness of our greatest vision. The really interesting thing, or maybe funny thing, depending upon how you look at it, is that around this whole idea is that we not only disown those qualities that we find really undesirable within us, but that we also really disown our light. All of those really magnificent qualities that we admire in somebody else but don't think that we could possibly have within us. Our negative self-talks talk so loudly and so consistently that it wouldn't even dawn on us that we already have everything within us that we could ever be seeking. for many of us, it's even harder to embrace our brilliance, our beauty, our creativity, our uniqueness, or our magnificence than it is to own our darkness. Some find it even harder to do that. But if our relationships are mirrors, which I believe that they are, then that which we admire in others already exists within us. It really, can be no other way. Now, we can also take this idea out of the guest house and bring it to the experiences of our lives out in the world. Now, some really good questions that we can all ask ourselves is, have I ever had the experience that something that I was going through or some relationship that I was involved in was somehow made more challenging or more of a struggle because of my resistance to it? I see a few heads nodding. Or how about this question? Have I ever sat back and realized that while it did not seem so in the moment, the experience that I was going through, the relationship that I was involved in, was exactly what I needed at that particular moment, and that I could never have designed it or planned it on my own? That I could never have done that. Sometimes these seemingly opposing forces, these imperfections or these new guest house arrivals are exactly what we need to grow spiritually, both individually and collectively. Allowing ourselves to harmoniously embrace all of it without resistance, we allow for the gift to be revealed, for the divine plan to unfold. Who here today is familiar with Rachel Naomi Remen? Just a couple of people. Now, she is an author and an essayist, and she wrote a book called, you might know this, Kitchen Table Wisdom. And in it, she tells a story about when she was a little girl. I told the story once, but it was quite a long time ago, so I'm bringing it back because it so perfectly demonstrates this idea. Apparently, throughout her entire childhood, her parents always kept a giant puzzle on a puzzle table in the middle of their living room. Her father originally bought the very first puzzle for her mother for her birthday. Now, from the very first puzzle on, he would always hide the box top. And he did so because he said that the idea was to be able to put the pieces together without knowing the picture beforehand. It was a game he liked to play. Family members, friends, and other visitors would work on the puzzle whenever they had the time. When her father first bought that first puzzle, Rachel Naomi Remen was about 3 or 4 years old, and nobody really took the time to explain to her the game or actually how she could participate in it. But she sat back and she watched. And she watched how they were playing with those different pieces, and she knew that she really wanted to participate. So one day, when she was all alone in the living room, she climbed up on a chair and she really spread out hundreds of these little pieces around the table. And she looked at them. And as she looked at them, she noticed that some of them were really brightly colored and others were kind of dark and shadowy. She said that the dark and shadowy ones kind of made her think about spiders and bugs, and that they were a little bit frightening, somewhat terrifying. They really made her feel uncomfortable. So she gathered up all of those dark and shadowy pieces, the ones that made her feel uncomfortable, and she climbed down from that chair and she stuck them underneath the cushion in the sofa. Now, for several weeks, whenever she was alone, she would climb back up onto that chair. She would gather a few more of the dark and shadowy, scary, uncomfortable creating pieces and put them, climb back down the chair and put them underneath with her entire stash, which was now becoming quite large, underneath that cushion. So as you can imagine, the puzzle was taking really a long time to complete. So frustrated, her mother finally counted the pieces and she realized that there was hundreds of them missing. So she asked her younger daughter if she knew anything about it. Rachel, or Naomi Remen, even at that time, was filled with integrity, so she told her mom. She told her mom what she had done with those pieces that she didn't like, and then her mom went and rescued them from underneath the sofa, and then she was actually able to complete this puzzle. About this moment, that moment in time as her mother was completing that puzzle, she says, "I remember watching her do this. As piece after dark piece was put in place and the picture emerged, I was astounded. I had not known that there would be a picture. It was quite beautiful, a peaceful scene of a deserted beach. Without the pieces I had hidden, the game made no sense. Perhaps winning requires that we love the game unconditionally. Life provides all of the pieces. When I accepted certain parts of life and denied or ignored the rest, I could only see my life a piece at a time, the happiness of a success or a time of celebration, or the ugliness and pain of a loss or failure I was trying to put behind me out of sight. But like the dark pieces of the puzzle, these sadder events, painful as they are, have proven themselves a part of something bigger. What brief glimpses I have had of something hidden seem to require accepting as a gift every last piece." Now, I know that each one of us has experienced or may be experiencing in this moment what we would call a dark puzzle piece. Perhaps these dark pieces are qualities of ourselves or aspects of our relationship or challenging times within our lives or throughout the world, times of fear, doubt, worry, confusion, sadness, and profound grief that we would really rather shove underneath that cushion. The invitation today is to find a way to make all of it welcome. It is really that important. Kelly says, choosing to live in integrity is a declaration to the universe and to all of those around you that you are finally ready to own all of who you are. That you are a powerful co-creator, that you are worthy and deserving to live the life that you were meant to live, that you are complete. So the invitation today is to step into our wholeness, to do the work that is necessary to integrate all aspects of ourselves within our consciousness and within our lives, and then to really co-create from that powerful space of integrity. Please repeat after me. Today I choose to own all of who I am with compassion for myself. Today I choose to own all of who I am with compassion for myself. Today I choose to live in integrity with my wholeness. Today I choose to live in integrity with my wholeness. Today I choose to live in alignment with my deepest truths and grandest desires. Today I choose to live in alignment with my deepest truths and my grandest desires. And so it is. So turn within and pray with me. Turning within, closing my outer eyes, turning away from the world of form, and allowing my attention and intention to focus itself on the center of my being, I am acutely aware of the power and the presence of the divine that is within me. I know that it is the very essence of peace, joy, creativity, wisdom, freedom, unconditional love, and abundance. All of the things that I so desire in my life are already there, present, simply because God, the spark of the divine, is at the center of my being. And I know this can't just be true for me if it's not true for each and every person. So I know that each of us, those here today in the sanctuary and those at home, those out in the world far beyond this triangle area, we are all divine emanations of the divine. And it is from that place of unity that I speak these words about and for each of us today, both individually and collectively as this community and as one world community. Truly knowing that we are spiritual beings having a human incarnation, that we have all of that we need to create lives that we love to live, to create a world that works for everyone. And so I claim ease and grace for us around this idea of integrity, around recognizing our oneness and standing firmly grounded in it, around this idea of infinite inclusivity, knowing that as God holds it all, we too can do the same. Knowing that what in one moment might feel out of alignment can simply shift back into alignment with ease, with some subtle shift in our way of thinking, with a dusting off of the lens that we're seeing through, with an openness to listen to someone else's idea and opinion. And ease and grace around this idea of harmoniously embracing who we are, our divinity, each other, everything on the planet, and all of the experiences that we have, knowing that each and every single one of them are so vital to who we are today, that we can't hide the dark and shadowy ones, the ones that remind us of spiders or bugs, because they matter to the whole. They help to create beauty, a beautiful space and place, a beautiful picture, a picture that we can't see when we're just focusing on the little things that we like. So I'm grateful for that ease and grace, grateful for my awareness that we travel this path together, that we support each other in our standing in the truth. And I'm so grateful to know this truth and to speak these words. So grateful for the power of prayer, knowing that these words are loosed into a law that only ever says yes, that my words are clothed in form even as they are spoken. And so I speak them and release them with love and gratitude. And I invite everyone to anchor my words for yourselves and each other simply by saying, and so it is. Amen. Amen. Thank you, everyone.